Welcome to part 2 of the product catalog website. What I want to do right now is show you how to connect to a local database. We're going to use SQL Server, the Express version in this example, and we're going to connect it directly to the presentation layer. Now, having said that, I will clarify one thing. I don't think in any way is tying the data layer to the presentation layer a good way of going about doing anything. Reason being, if you change the presentation, you also have to change the data and so forth. And that's why we really built 3-tier applications or N-tier applications where there's a separation between the presentation layer and the data layer. And we use a component layer in between to do that. However, I do want to show how this is done for just clarification purposes and so that you can see the differences. So the first thing that I want to do is create a database, a local database. And to do that, we can just right click, add, sorry, my mouse goes crazy sometimes. Oh, come on. Add, there it is. New item. We could have hit database on the other screen, but you can hit data right here and SQL Server database and just name the database whatever you want. In my case, I'm just going to name it DAT database. And it's going to ask me if I want to put this in the app data folder. You should always hit yes, and what this is it organizes data and code in certain folders that have permissions specifically set for security purposes. So go ahead and hit yes, and that's going to go ahead and create the database, which you will notice now it's over here. So I can double click on this and it will open it up on the left hand side, and now I can add my tables. To add tables, you can right click and add new table. And in my case, I'm just going to create a very simple database. It'll just be one table which will contain the product information such as product code, description, quantity in stock, and sales price, and that's pretty much it. Now, I follow a particular sequence, not sequence, let's say a particular syntax that we use for database creation. And this is just because we got in the habit of doing this company wide. And the first thing is that the table is called whatever it is that we're trying to create in terms of entity. In this case, products. So it would be products, the name of the table. And this is plural. The ID or primary key will always be the name of the table underscore ID. And again, this is just a naming convention that we use. You don't really have to do this. Alright, we'll call product code. Product code could be something like UPC code and so forth. This is just another standard item that we create. And I'm going to use the varchar 50. And we'll go ahead and allow nulls just for simplicity. Description. And let's say this will be varchar max. Let's say quantity in stock, and this will be an int. And sales price. And I'm not too used to SQL Server, so let me see what they have. I guess money is fine. Okay, and then these are pretty much all of the fields that we're going to create in this table. I don't really think we need anything else for such a simple table. So I can go ahead and click on update. If this was something real, you may want to put like cost and so forth. But for this purpose, it's more than enough. And so you hit update and it's going to go ahead and run those queries. Once it finishes, as you can see it finished here, you can just refresh and the table will now be here. So I can go ahead and open that. Now what I can do is enter some new information just to have some sort of data, so when I test it out I can see data. So I'm going to click on show table data, and what this does is it shows the data view. If you're used to Microsoft Access, it's pretty much data view. Okay, so in product code I'm going to enter something and we'll call this test. We'll say there's 0 and it'll be 1. And was updated. I wonder what the problem here is. Alright, let's go and check this. Oh, I'm sorry. We have to actually enter data, I believe. There we go. Although this should be a unique, what we have to do is create, I think it's called unique identity in SQL Server. If you are used to MySQL, it would just be an auto increment. So let's go ahead and modify this and make sure it is an auto increment. So in here, make sure this row is selected, and I believe it's called, there it is, identity specification. Make sure that this is true, and there it's going to create the identity increment and all that stuff, and then go ahead and update database. Most database systems will be similar, but they change the actual names a little bit, but it's fairly, if you get errors like that, you can kind of understand what the error is, as long as you understand somewhat what the syntax of the error. So in that case, it told me that it wasn't able to create a new row, and that was because it was requiring something. So I automatically assumed that I forgot to put it as identity. Okay, so we have one row, and that is ready to go. Let's go ahead and click out of that, and now we're ready to create the actual elements. To create the actual elements, I'm going to start with the products page. Now the products page will be very simple. All it will do is it will include a data grid that will show all of the data products. I'm sorry, all of the products that are on there, meaning all of the rows within my table, my products table. That's as simple as that. To do that, I can go into Toolbox, and I can look for Data Grid View, which will be part of the data portion. And there it is, Grid View. I can double click on that or drag and drop, either or. And there it is. I can choose an auto format and select whatever I want. Let's go ahead and just put classic and set it to 100% so that it fills the available space. There we go. And now what I want to do is actually tie it to my data table. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to create a data source for it by clicking New Data Source. And the wizard will come up. I'm going to click on SQL, the database portion here. And I'm going to call it SQL Products. And OK. It's going to ask me for a connection string. I can just select my database and next, and go ahead and save the connection. You will need this in the future, so make sure that this is checked and saved. What this will do is it will save this in the web.config file, which is very necessary. And then I can either create a custom SQL statement or just hit next, which will select the asterisk, which means all of them. If you look at the bottom, that's what it's actually doing right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click next, and I can test the query, and it should return that row that I had created. There it is. And I can click finish. And there I am. Now what I want to do here is maybe edit these column names just so that they make a little bit more sense, meaning straighten them out so that they're more readable. So I'm going to click on edit fields, and here in header text I could just put product code, and then description with proper case, and then maybe just put in stock and sales price. And there we are. And I can hit OK, and that will edit these things out. If I even wanted to, I can hide products IDs, since this really isn't necessary. That's more of the database's way of handling rows. Those primary keys really aren't for the user or programmer. They're really for the database to manage the data itself. So again, you can change this also. Let's if I want maybe something that's a little bit nicer with what I have in the background, you can change all this. The cool part is this creates all the HTML behind for it. And so what you can do is find out what color scheme this is, and then go into source and actually modify these back colors with the hexadecimal version of the color that you're trying to get. So it makes it a lot nicer. It's a lot more in sync with the template that you're using. For our case, this is good enough. And I can run this and then show how exactly this will look. If you don't have any data, you won't see the grid. So make sure that when you do your version, you go ahead and do this. Oh, okay. I have an exception. This was from the first week one, from the first part, and it's because I don't have this session variable. If you recall from part one, I created a session variable, which is a very good reason to always have a try catch. So let's modify the code here a bit. And I can just do that for now. That's good enough. And there we are. And so here's the one product that I have. Since this will be a products catalog, then my idea is just show the products to the user. That's all it really does. But in the manage products portion, something that the administrator would have a way of adding, editing, and deleting. Obviously right here when we did the add, I did it manually, and you wouldn't always want to do this. What you would want to do is allow the administrative user to be able to use this web interface to add products without having to actually go into the database and add the products manually. That wouldn't be a very good way of doing anything. Alright, so let's go ahead and work on that portion right now. So what I want to do here is, in Manage Products, I want to create a way for the user to add, edit, and delete inventory. Now the first thing that I want to do is use the exact same thing I have in the products page so that my users can just can see what's currently there and then add, edit, or delete from there. So we're just going to copy what we just did. And there it is. And I should be able to see the exact same thing. Since this is presentation layer, there is no actual code. Then when I run this, and let me just make sure I have nothing on my page load. Alright, there we go, nothing on the page load. So when I run this, I should get the exact same thing, nothing different. And we'll run it just to verify. And there it is. So what I want to do now is modify this so that I can add, edit, and delete. Now the first one, add, is very simple. Let's just go ahead and incorporate a couple of elements. And for this, what I want to use is a panel. Let's see, where's that panel of mine? There it is, panel. And we'll call this P&L information. And the reason that I want this is because I want to be able to set this equal to invisible, or visible equals false, unless add is clicked on. So what I want to do is create event handlers for add, edit, and delete. To do that, I can click on edit columns, and I can create my delete command. Actually, I want to create a button field so that it's here. Let's delete this one, and let's use button so that I can show you something that's a little bit different. And this one will be called delete. And what I need to do is name this. And for the name, I believe it's in, I can't remember where. Let's see, is it item style? It might be item style. Link type find, text. There it is, command name. So we'll call this btn delete. That's basically the command name that's going to be used in code. So I have my delete. Now what I want to do is enable selection also. And what this portion does is it creates the event handler for the change event, the select index changed event. That's why I want to use this one. And so what I want to do here is if I hit select, it means that I probably want to edit it. If I hit delete, it means I want to delete. And now I want to create one for add. And what we can do there is add a button that says add new. So we'll create a link button here, add new product, and we'll call this BTN add. There it is. And so I have my add, my select, and my delete. Alright, and now I can create the code for all of this that will make all of this work. For select and for add, I want to use this panel. And what I want to do is show the data. So we'll create a label and a text box. And we're going to do this for every field. And my label will be called product code. And we'll call this LBL product code. And we'll call this text box TXT product code. And I can copy this, and I want one for description, I want one for in stock, and I want one for price. And then we'll modify these things. So LBL description, and this will be description, and we'll call this description. If you want to make this nicer, what you can do is add this to a table, and then format the table so that all spacing is nice and all that. For the sake of simplicity, I'm not going to do any of that. So LBL in stock, and we'll call this in stock, and we'll call this TXT in stock, and last but not least, LBL sales price, and we will call this sales price, and the text box TXT sales price. Now remember, all of this is a presentation layer. If I want, I can modify, the size of all this stuff. So make this one a little bit wider, make this one less wide, make this one less wide, and so forth. And now I can add a button which I will use as an event handler. So I may want to add two buttons. One is going to be called update. So what this one will do is we'll update whatever command it is that I choose, and we'll go through that in a little bit. And this will be BTN update. And the other one will be called cancel, meaning I change my mind, I just want to close this. So let's see, link button and cancel. By the way, there is no difference between link button and button except how it looks. Alright, so I'm pretty much done with my presentation with the GUI part. Now I need to do some code. And just to get through this, I'll show you. If I hit select, I should be putting this here, putting all the product information in these fields, and then if update is selected, it updates or edits the row. If I hit cancel, oh by the way, when I hit select, it should put this panel as visible. When I hit cancel, it should put the panel as invisible, set these text objects to empty string, and not do anything else. If I hit delete, it should delete the row and update the grid. If I hit add new product, it should show these as empty, allow the user to enter data, and then when update is selected, it should perform an add procedure instead of an edit procedure. So we'll use the same button to do both depending on what the behavior is of the actual action taken by the user. So the first one that I want to do is the select. So what I'm going to do is double click here, and you'll see that it says grid view 1 select index change. Well, actually, I don't like that name. Let's rename this to grid products. Alright, and now we can double click on this, and there we are. Oh, it didn't change it. Actually, The reason it did not change that, by the way, is because when I hit the first double click, it had already created an event handler for it. If you ever want to see those events, make sure that the element is selected and then click over here, events, and you'll see this. Now we can change that to what I just renamed, which is this one, and there we go. Oops. Make sure you don't hit the backspace like I did. Alright, there we go. And so as you can see, I'm right here now. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to create a grid view row, and we're going to call that row, and it's going to be equal to whatever was selected. And I know what was selected because this holds selected row right here. So now my data, whatever was selected, is in here. So I can load my GUI. So the GUI is txt_product_code.txt, which would be the first element. So it would be row.cells2.txt. Now the reason it's 2 is because it starts with index 1, and I'm sorry, it starts with index 0, but index 0 is that portion where it's just a selector. Then index 1 is the ID, then index 2 is the actual product code. And you can know what they are by going here and looking at these, and that should be able to tell you which one is which. Alright, so let's go back to that. Actually, in this case it would be 3, I'm sorry, because if I look, I have select, delete, and then this one. So it would be 3 because it's this one. So let's go ahead and modify that. Just go back to the select, and this would be 3. txt description.text would be the next one, so it would be row.cells. Even if you got this wrong, when you execute it you would notice it, so you can just change it then. No big deal. txt quantity in stock.text would be row.cells5.text, and then txt sales price.text would equal rows.cells6.text. Alright, so what that's going to do is it's going to load my GUI. It's going to load all of the stuff from the data row to the actual graphical user interface. Now, one of the important things that I need to understand is that the same update button is going to behave differently depending on what the user did. That's an important distinction, because if I hit select or if I hit add, I can't execute the same exact code. So I need some sort of session variable that's going to allow me to differentiate the which one is what. So the way that I do that is I'm going to add a session.add, which is a session variable, and I'm going to create something like isEdit, and I'm going to set it to true. So what that's going to do is it's going to create a session variable called isEdit, and it's going to instantiate it to true. And what I also need is the ID of what it is that the primary key of what it is that I'm updating, what product. So in this case, I would put session.add, again, another session variable, and I'm going to call it selected ID. You can name this whatever, it's just I have the standard convention of naming it that. And then the actual object value, which would be in rows.cells, in this case 2.text. And remember, 2 is because I'm using the second row. I'm sorry, the second column. And that's pretty much it. Now, another thing that you should get into the habit of is commenting all this stuff. So load data, for example. Create session variables. This will make it much easier later on when you're trying to debug the code and you're asking, what the heck was I thinking? Well, there you go. At least that now you would have an idea of what the heck you were thinking. If you were thinking something wrong, you would at least be able to sort of read it or kind of think what it is that you were trying to do. So it is important to always comment. Alright, so that's it for that one. Now, the delete and the add and update, this was actually select, so that's the easy one. But the delete, add, and update require parameters that we have to set within the presentation layer. Again, I hate doing that, but I want to show you how to do this in the event that you have to do this in some cases. Now, all of this is done through that SQL data source object that we were looking at before. And so what you need to do is actually modify that stuff. And to do that, we go back into manage products and we click on our SQL data source object. And if we look on the bottom, we have select, insert, and so forth. So let's select was automatically done when we created it. And if you need to look at it and verify it, click on that and you'll see that there it is. But we need to do the rest. And so I want to click on this one and I'm going to click on insert query. And so now I need to type the insert command that should be executed when an insert command is actually executed. So what SQL is it that we're going to run? So I'm going to type in insert into products and then my actual column names. So I'll do product code, description, quantity in stock, and sales price. You got to be very careful with this because if you misspell a column, it will give you some sort of error when you try to execute this. If you're getting an error when you're executing it, automatically assume that it's probably going to be a typo on this part, on this portion, either in the insert or in the update or in the delete. Then I want to do values. And now the parameters. So my parameters, I'm going to call them exactly the same thing, but with the at sign before. So product code, comma, at description, comma, at quantity in stock, and at sales price. What this means is these here are variables that will change based on what's sent to this presentation layer by the user. And now I need to actually create the parameters, the parameter names, which will be accessible via code. So I'm going to hit, and I'm going to call them exactly the same thing. Product code, description, quantity in stock, and sales price. Well, I need to do this for also the update and the delete. So let's go ahead and do that. So for update, once again, we're going to click here, go to the update query, and do the same thing. So update products, set product code equal to and my parameter. If you don't know SQL, you may want to take a little refresher because this is all SQL here. The only difference is just these parameters, but other than that, it's pretty much the same. So we have product code, description, quantity in stock equal to the parameter, quantity in stock. And then the last one is sales price equal to at sales price. And there we are. Alright. Actually, we do need one more. First of all, we don't need this here. Set product code equal to. We need the where clause. Where products ID equal at products ID. And now we can create all the parameters. So the first one will be product code. And again, this parameter name should just match right here. I name them exactly the same thing as a column field so that I never have a doubt as to what they're called once I'm calling them from code. Alright, and then sales price, and then my where clause parameter, which will be products ID. And there it is. And now we need to do the delete. So for my delete query, same thing. I'm going to look for delete query, and I'm just going to fill this out. So this will be delete from products, where products ID equals at products ID. That's pretty much it. And then it only has one parameter, which will be the where, and this will be products ID, and that's it. So what this will do is if you click on source, you'll see that it added all the parameters and all this stuff, all organized. So now we can actually add some meaningful code. Alright, so let's go back to manage products, and what I want to do is we have the select. Again, the select is easy because it's the first one that's automatically given, but now we can add something called RowCommand. RowCommand, we can automatically tie it to that button that we created called delete. If you guys remember, it'll be here, this delete button right here, which is called btn delete. So what we can do is click here and go to events and look for RowCommand, and there it is. And now we can add some code for RowCommand. So I can ask it, well, if e.command name dot toString equals btn delete, meaning, hey, did the user click delete, then do whatever it is that I'm going to do. Otherwise, don't even bother with it. If the RowCommand was delete, it means that the user clicked on that. So I can put long selected ID. I need to obtain the ID of whatever it is that I'm selecting. ID is a primary key, remember that. And I can do something like convert. This is going to return a string. Well, I'm going to parse it into a string, so I need to convert this into a long. So I want to do convert dot to int32, and then what it is that I want to convert, well, it's going to be grd products dot data keys int dot parse, and then e dot command argument dot toString. And I believe that should do it. Alright, I might be missing something. Yes, I am missing something. What am I? Oh, I'm sorry. Data keys is this. So data keys should actually be this. There we go. That should work. Okay, so selected ID. Oh, and I forgot the equal sign. My bad. Alright, there we are. So that will return whatever it was selected. Now, if you're in doubt as to what data keys are, if you look at your data grid and you go to this properties, you will see something called data key names. It automatically selects the primary key as your data key. So this is what data key will end up being. So if we go back here, that's what this means. All this means is, hey, give me back what it is that I need, which would be the I'm sorry, I'm missing something else here. Dot value. There you go. All right. It will be give me back whatever the value is and convert that to an int32. So it'll return it as a string, convert it to an int32, which I can now use as selected ID. So this selected ID will hold the primary key of whatever was selected. If the first row was selected, it would be that. If the second row was selected, it would be that. And now what I can do is I can pass this to that delete parameter, that delete command that I created. So I'm going to call, I think I called it SQL products dot delete parameters right there. And now it's asking me, well, what delete parameter are you talking about? Well, remember, we called all of our parameters exactly their column names. So I know that this would be products ID. So it's saying, hey, load whatever it is that I want into this delete parameter that I created, and set the default value equal to what I just did, which is selected ID.toString. Now, it hasn't executed anything yet. All it's done right here is loaded that delete parameter, but now I can run it. Now, what I should always do is do that try catch. And what this ensures is that I don't have any errors, any problems here, and if I do, it'll run this. So what I want to try here is to execute that. So I can do delete, and it executes that delete query, and there it is. So that is how you would delete something based on what was clicked. So when the user clicks delete, whatever row was selected, it executes this code exactly as is. And again, as always, make sure that you label all this stuff. Comment. So for example, check to see if the delete button was pressed. That can be one example. And over here, get the primary key of the selected row. All this stuff helps later on. Then right here, send primary key to the delete parameter. And then here, execute. Execute delete query. Anytime I go back and I read this, I know exactly what it is that I was doing or I was thinking. Okay, now that we have delete done and now that we have select done, we want to work on the code for add or update because it's here. It's on the same item. So I'm going to double click on this to add this. And so the first thing that I want to do is determine, well, is it an edit or is it an add? Remember that this is based on the session variable that was created. So I can do something called bool is edit, and I can do a try catch. Now the reason that I need to do a try catch is because if it was if update was clicked before anything else, which really isn't possible, but you always want to do a try catch, then it would create some sort of runtime error. And those runtime errors are the last thing that we ever want. We always want to try to catch any type of error and make it some sort of catchable error within the running of the program. So isEdit here will be equal to bool.parse and that session variable that we had created, which is called isEdit. I think this is how we called it. .toString. Again, you always want to verify it. So what I'm going to do now is verify it. So I'll go back where I hit and isEdit. Yep, that is exactly how I labeled it. So there it is. So this will tell me if isEdit was true or is false. And if some sort of error occurs, it just means that isEdit is false. That's all it means. Okay, so now I can modify the behavior based on what it is that I want to do, based on what it is that the user clicked. So here, if not isEdit, meaning it's an add, then do whatever, else do whatever else. And now I can go ahead and add my code to this. So if it's an edit, if it's if it's not an edit, if it's a new item, then I want to fill the insert commands interparameters up. So what I want to do is I want to call SQL products dot insert parameter, and my insert parameter are going to be the same name as the column name, so I'll have product code, and that will be equal to dot default value, and that will be equal to product code dot text, and SQL products dot insert parameters, and we'll call this description dot default value will be description dot text, and SQL products dot insert parameter quantity in stock dot default value will be equal to txt quantity in stock dot text, and SQL products dot insert parameters sales price dot default value will be txt sales price dot text. Now one thing I can't remember with these SQL queries, again, because this is tied to the presentation layer, is if this dot text will be converted at some point into money, which will be some sort of double, or quantity in stock, which is, I believe, an int. If that's not the case, this will throw an error, and it will cause a runtime error, which means we will eventually have to parse. We would do something like int.parse and do this. So we'll see. Again, I don't remember. If that ends up being the case, then we'll just parse the data and no harm done. All right, and now we can do a try catch. So try catch, and the try would be SQL dot insert. There it is, dot insert. And that will call that part up. What I also want to do is, once insert is called, I want to clear all my fields. Because remember, all of these are going to have text. So I need to be able to clear the fields in some point. And the way that I do that is I will write a function, because it will probably be called more than once. So I can write private void clear fields. And what this will do is reset my GUI and any parameters that I want. So txt product code dot text will equal empty string. Txt description dot text will equal empty string. Txt quantity and stock dot text equals empty string. And txt sales price dot text equals empty string. I can also set my session variables up to nothing. So for example, I could put session is edit equal false, and session selected ID equals to either an empty string or 0, whatever I want. This is just to make sure I clear all this stuff up and restart from fresh after this is created. And then in here I can say clear fields, and there it is. So this one is for insert. Now what I want to do is add one for edit, and the edit will be pretty much the same exact thing. So what I want to do here is I'm just going to copy and paste and then modify it. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here, and then instead of insert, it'll be update parameters. Again, it's just being a little lazy, nothing wrong with that. But I am missing one more, which will be SQL products dot update parameters, and that will be products ID, and that will be the session variable. So session selected ID. I think that's how we did it. .toString. Again, if there's ever a doubt, always verify it, and it's very easy to verify it. I can just go over here and say, oh, okay, it was selected ID, so that is correct. And so I can go back over here, and let's see, what is it complaining about? Oh, I'm sorry, the default value. There we go. All right, and so instead of insert here, it'll be .update. So go ahead and call that. And also clear fields, which is already there, so we're good to go. And finally, let's just make sure we do a couple of checks. So when I select it, it should, see, I missed something here. I have to make that panel visible. So pnl.information.visible equals true, which means after I hit update, or when that clear fields takes place, I should set it back to false. So pnl information.visible equals false. There we go. So now that should work. So now let's go ahead and test our code. Execute this. So if we hit select, let's say we want to change quantity in stock and update, and there it is. As you can see, it went ahead and update. I want to add a new product, So we're going to click on add new product, and add new product is not necessarily working, so we know that there's an error here. So let's go back and add new product, and let's take a look at that. Click over here, and as we can see, nothing was ever called in add new product. So what we got to do is create the event handler for it. All that this really will do is it's going to be the same thing that's going to be called when select was called, except that instead of select, instead of edit, it's going to be new. So basically these three elements here are what's going to be loaded. So I can go into here and click on add new product and paste this code. So session.add, this one will be false, and then this we don't actually need because it can be 0, and there we go. So now we can go ahead and call this. So we're going to click on this, new item test, $102, and update. And there it is. And the last one would be the delete key, and there it is. If you wanted to make this a little bit better, you can add commands, message boxes that'll show, hey, are you sure you want to delete, or whatever, that stuff. Anyway, this should give a very good idea of how to create the presentation layer tied to the data layer, or basically a direct integration between the database and that. And this will end part 2. Part 3, what I'm going to do is completely eliminate the dependency between the presentation layer and the data layer, and make it independent by building a component layer in between, which will take care of all of this functionality. So I hope to have you guys take a look at that. Have a great day.